My name is Leah. 3 months ago, I stood on a small stage in front of an audience of women from shelters, support groups, and recovery programs. When I said, "My name is Leah, and I am not ashamed of my story anymore," I was transported back to the darkest days of my life. I grew up in a small town, the daughter of a strict father and a kind-hearted mother. My father, a simple factory worker, was always firm and unyielding in his views. He believed that a woman's place was in the home, and he instilled a sense of discipline in me from an early age. My mother, on the other hand, was warm and nurturing, always there to comfort me when I was sad. I met Victor at a business event in the city. He was charming, wealthy, and seemed to have the world at his feet. He was 38, a self-made millionaire who had built a successful tech company. I was immediately drawn to his confidence and charisma. We got married within a year, and I moved into his luxurious mansion on the outskirts of the city. Life was a whirlwind of parties, social events, and a seemingly perfect marriage at first. But as time went on, I started to see a different side of Victor. He was controlling, possessive, and quick-tempered. He wanted to control every aspect of my life, from what I wore to who I talked to. One day, on my 30th birthday, he threw a grand party at our mansion. The ballroom was filled with our friends, his business partners, and the city's elite. The chandeliers sparkled, and the music was playing softly in the background. "Happy birthday, sweetheart," Victor said, right before his palm cracked across my face. The room went dead silent. Forks froze mid-air, and a violinist missed his note. Victor smiled like nothing had happened, as if this was just another normal day. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just stood there, my cheek burning, and my heart colder than I'd ever known it could be. The guests, who were supposed to be our friends, pretended not to see. In Victor's world, silence was loyalty. I picked up my glass, took a slow sip, and whispered, "To new beginnings." Then I walked to the far end of the ballroom, my heels echoing like war drums. Everyone stared at me, waiting for tears or an apology. But instead I laughed. A low, sharp laugh that made the chandelier seem to shiver. Victor's smirk faltered. He had no idea that this laugh was the sound of my breaking free. That night, under the glare of the chandeliers and cameras, I made a promise to myself. Never again would I beg to be seen. Never again would I let his power define my silence. I looked around that glittering hall, filled with lies and the people who supported his false image. I thought about how poetic it was that he tried to break me in front of everyone and on camera. The world would see what I saw. Not tonight, not yet, but soon. The next morning, sunlight cut through the curtains like knives. My cheeks still ached, and faint fingerprints ghosted my skin. Victor slept soundly beside me, like a man who believed the world still belonged to him. Downstairs, the staff avoided my eyes. They'd all seen what happened, but in this house, silence was the price for keeping their jobs. I brewed coffee, my hands steady. Every sound in the kitchen seemed amplified, the hiss of steam, the clink of porcelain, and the low hum of the refrigerator. I was taking back control, piece by piece. Victor appeared in the doorway, still in his robe, scrolling through his phone. "You embarrassed me last night," he said, casually, as if we were discussing the weather. I met his gaze. "You hit me." He smiled. "You pushed me." That was his usual routine, breaking me and then convincing me it was my fault. But this time I just said, "Noted," and walked away. While he slept last night, I'd already started my plan. I downloaded every photo, every message, and every video from the ballroom surveillance system. Victor loved to document his life, and the cameras he installed for security had also recorded his cruelty. I had all the evidence. Later that day, I visited my lawyer, Harper Reed. She was an old friend from college who had once told me, "If you ever need out, really out, call me." When she saw my cheek, she said quietly, "You're ready." I nodded. He thought last night was about controlling me, but it was his confession. We drafted the first papers, including financials, asset division, and evidence. As I left her office, I looked up at the sky, which was blue, bright, and painfully free. The countdown had begun. That evening, Victor hosted a dinner for his investors. He insisted I attend to keep up appearances. I wore a sleek black dress, exuding calm and determination. I was no longer the helpless wife they expected. I was the woman whose silence could end a career. When we entered the restaurant, the air thickened. Cameras flashed and compliments poured in. Victor grinned as if nothing had happened. His favorite lie was pretending that we were the perfect couple. At the table, his hand found mine beneath the linen, squeezing tightly. "You're going to smile," he whispered, "or I'll make you." I smiled, but it wasn't for him, because I knew what was waiting. Harper had connected me with a private investigator, Owen Black. He was quietly following Victor's trail, looking into his emails, offshore transfers, and fake company accounts. That night, while Victor played the charming husband, Owen was downloading files from his office computer. Halfway through dinner, Victor raised a toast. To love, success, and second chances. Second chances for a man who'd never given one to anyone. When the wine hit my tongue, I looked across the table and saw his reflection in the glass, smug, careless, and thinking he was untouchable. I realized the irony. He'd built an empire on appearances, but he didn't notice the cracks. He didn't notice that I wasn't shaking anymore. He didn't notice that I'd already moved his passwords, copied his files, and emptied my share of the money into a private account under my name. When dessert arrived, I stood up and leaned close to his ear. "Enjoy your meal," I whispered. "It might be your last peaceful one." He frowned, confused, as I smiled for the cameras. That was the night his empire quietly began to fall. 2 days later, Victor's mask started to crack. He came home early, his jaw tight and his eyes blazing. "Did you move the money from our joint account?" he demanded. I didn't look up from my laptop.
"No."
I moved mine. He laughed, short and cruel. "You think you can play games with me?" I shut the screen and stood up slowly. "No, Victor. I think I just stopped playing yours." His voice dropped to a dangerous whisper. "You forget who you're talking to." I tilted my head. The man who hits his wife in front of 100 people? For the first time, he went pale. He knew I had proof. He tried to smile it off. "You wouldn't dare. It would ruin you, too." I took a step closer. "No, Victor. It would free me." That night, I sent Harper the edited footage, a clear and undeniable clip of him hitting me. She sent back a message. "This changes everything." By morning, Victor's world began to tilt. His PR team called, his investors backed out of meetings, and whispers started spreading through the press about a domestic altercation. He stormed into my studio, slamming the door. "You think this will hurt me? You're nothing without my name," he said. I smiled, the same calm, dangerous smile from that night. "Then let's see how far your name goes without your reputation." He grabbed my wrist, but this time I didn't flinch. I just said, "Touch me again, and I'll make sure that video is the first thing people see when they search your name." He froze. For the first time in years, he looked scared. By the end of the week, Victor's phone wouldn't stop buzzing. His investors had seen the clip, his PR manager quit, and his company's board requested an emergency meeting. I didn't release the full footage yet, just enough to let the cracks show. Victor paced around the house, muttering, "You've ruined everything," under his breath. But I stayed calm. I'd already signed the lease for a new apartment, set up the utilities, and installed security cameras. Harper had drawn up the divorce petition with clauses that guaranteed I'd get my fair share of the assets, and a restraining order was ready if he so much as raised his voice. 3 nights later, he snapped. "You think you can survive without me? You'll come crawling back." I looked him straight in the eye and said, "I already did. Years ago. You just didn't notice when I stopped." Just then, the doorbell rang. 2 men in suits from the board of directors stood outside. "Mr. Thompson, the board requests your immediate attendance tomorrow morning. You might want to bring legal representation." His face drained of color. He turned to me, trembling with rage. "You planned this." I didn't deny it. I just whispered, "You planned it the night you hit me." The morning of the board meeting was unnervingly calm. I sat in my car outside the company headquarters, watching the building that had once been Victor's kingdom. Reporters were already gathering by the front steps. I saw Victor step out of his black car, still wearing his designer suit, but his walk was different, slower, heavier, and uncertain. When the first camera flash hit, he flinched. One of the reporters shouted, "Mr. Thompson, is it true you assaulted your wife on her birthday?" He froze, and his jaw tightened. More questions followed, and his perfect composure cracked in front of the world. By noon, he was suspended indefinitely pending investigation. By sunset, every major outlet carried his story. Victor Thompson, the fall of a golden man. That evening, I sat on the balcony of my new apartment, feeling the soft breeze in my hair and watching the city lights blinking below. I wasn't smiling or crying. I was simply breathing. Harper called. "It's done," she said. "He's finished." I nodded and looked at the skyline. "Then let's finish the paperwork tomorrow." When I hung up, I opened my phone. There were no missed calls, no threats, no apologies. Just peace. It felt strange at first, that kind of silence. But it was full of everything I'd reclaimed. A week later, in Harper's office, I signed the divorce papers. Harper smiled across the table. "You're officially out, Leah." Out. The word felt weightless, like the first inhale after years underwater. Outside, it was raining. I stood under my umbrella, watching people rush by. None of them knew the war I'd just survived. That night, I drove to the coast, to the same beach where Victor once promised me forever. The air tasted of salt and new chances. The ocean roared, washing away the last traces of the woman who used to flinch at every raised voice. I pulled out my phone and opened my drafts. The full video of his abuse was there, but I didn't send it. Maybe not ever. Sometimes peace is the bigger punishment. He'd already lost everything that made him feel powerful. The company, the press, the illusion of control. I'd found something better than revenge, control over my own story. Back home, I framed the first sketch I'd drawn since leaving him, a hand releasing a bird mid-flight. I placed it above my desk with one simple caption, "Never again." When I finally lay in bed, I didn't dream of escape or fear. I dreamed of space, silence, and the beautiful feeling of being just me again. And for the first time in years, that was enough. That night, as I drove home from the event where I shared my story, I passed by a newsstand. A headline caught my eye, "Victor Thompson declares bankruptcy amid ongoing investigation." I didn't stop to read it. There was no satisfaction left to feel, only closure. At home, the sea wind blew through my open window, and I brewed tea. I opened the balcony doors and let the city lights blur into soft gold. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't broken. I was just free, finally, beautifully free. I lifted my cup toward the night sky, whispering, "To the woman who laughed instead of cried. To every one of us who finally chose peace over pain. Because in the end, revenge fades, but peace lingers." And that night, I slept without fear, without noise, without ghosts.